disappointed but not surprised. To start off, I'm going to talk about PSAs. They're ads that serve the public good, and the objective is to educate and create awareness of a social issue and to change the public's attitude and behavior. PCAs can have very different tactics. They could use humor to catch our attention, or they can use the shock treatment to provide a realistic look on the issue, or they could use preaching, which is basically repetition, which makes a permanent effect in one's brain, or you could use a celebrity because everybody loves celebrities and that will catch the viewer's attention. There are different elements to an effective PCA. And the fourth one is empathetic and simple, and it's also easily adaptive for different media. And the last one is to leave the audience with a message. Now for women and the media and how they are treated in the media's eyes. The media has great marketing skills and really know how to make consumers buy makeup, clothes, and different things like that. But is it entirely the media's fault for girls starving themselves or cutting? Are they in control of their own self-esteem? Does the media force them to buy their products? They're connected, but isn't it partially your decision to feel how you're feeling or believe the lies the magazines are feeding to you? Like buy Maybelline and you'll be 10 steps closer to looking like Jennifer Aniston. Can you entirely blame society, which you are a part of, for your bulimia or depression? The media creates an unrealistic view on women and their bodies, and they make women look weak and vulnerable in movies or magazines. This alters the way women look at each other. Since women watch movies like this and read magazines with these type of images, they develop these eating disorders. From a young age, girls think they should look a certain way to be beautiful. But men and their bodies are shown as strong and independent, and they don't get harshly judged for it. In the film Killing Us Softly by Jean Kilbourne, she discusses what the terms of femininity and masculinity is. Women and men are not treated equally, especially when it comes to their work, such as pay equity. In 2013, female full-time workers made only 78 cents for every dollar earned by men, a gender wage gap of 22 cents, but Kilbourne said she has seen a good change in the last 20 to 30 years. On to the topic of having the media in a few hands. It would be stupid to think the government isn't hiding anything from us, and that we could trust them. Having some parts of the media secreted from the public is a good and bad thing. Majority of the media is getting filtered by the news channels. It's not only small glimpses of the world we're getting, but lies on top of more lies. Just like Napoleon Bonaparte said, history is a set of lies agreed upon. Even tuning into CNN and ABC News every day, you will never get the 100% truth. People out in the world are catching on and realizing what's being hidden. The government only looks out for their own interest. For example, let's talk about chemtrails. Chemtrails are a visible trail left in the sky by an aircraft and believed by some to consist of a chemical or biological agents released as a part of a covert operation. Sounds a bit ridiculous, but people are concerned because the streaks could worsen global warming. More theories state the government has secretly been dumping harmful substances onto the land. Everyone knows the jet engines release and spew out these streaks, but they also release carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfate particles, and soot. Conspiracy theorists become suspicious that the chemicals releases jets today, which are thicker and linger longer than they did in the past. Their theory is that the government has since used that to put substances in them. There are many theories, but the extreme theory is the government is intentionally spraying people with harmful substances in order to experiment and weed out the sick and elderly, or trying to use weather manipulation for defense purposes. In the 1950s, the British were successful in seeding clouds with salt, dry ice, and silver iodine to make it rain. They were effective in this tactic for military defense. What about the truth? About 9/11, Alcatraz, global warming, ISIS? The government keeps a hold of internet searches and all texts that enter and leave the country. The government also keeps top secret nearly all decisions for the FISA court, and the FISA court has never denied the government's request for surveillance authorization. In its entire history, they have denied 11 out of 34,000 requests for surveillance. The government keeping secrets from us kind of reminds me of the book 1984 by George Orwell. He predicted that the government, Big Brother, is always watching you, and cameras and surveillance are everywhere. The book mentions war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. The term means war's peace because having a common enemy keeps the people united. For example, the Paris attack, the enemy terrorists shot the journalists, and the country came together unitedly. Freedom is slavery is a man who's independent is common to fail, and a man who has collective will is free from danger, and completely free to an extent. Ignorance is strength signifies keep the citizens dumb, and they'll be less likely to be overthrown. If you look at society today, a good dictator keeps the people ignorant, therefore rebellion is unlikely. Now on to persuasive speech. There are different types of powers of persuasion. Many people use the appeal tactic, or in other words, the fallacious arguments. The most common tactic is ad hominem, argument to the man. This means, while trying to persuade someone about a certain topic, they attack the person instead of attacking the argument. An example of this would be an attack on their work, sexuality, habits. The attack does not have to be strong. You can show small disrespect or cut down their stature or intelligence. There is also appeal to fear and scare tactics, which infers that the person must be wrong because if they're right, bad things would happen. You can also use appeal to authority, appeal to familiarity, appeal to force, coincidence, ethics, logos, pathos, and furthermore. Now on the topic of Disney. They put subliminal messages in their texts and movies. Most kids don't recognize the undertone, language, and stereotypes in these movies because it's hidden in such a secretive message. Kids are not going to try to dissect the meaning of every line, character objective, or the overall message. Disney is stealthily consuming kids, but many parents and guardians assume these movies and stories have good intentions in them because of the amount of children who watch it. Walt Disney Companies is one of the largest in the global media, and it gives kids entertainment and influences the kids. Disney's hidden messages consist of racism, stereotyping, masculinity and feminism, women's bodies, and much more. The female characters are portrayed as weak, naive, and always in need for a male savior. This allows girls to think they always need to have a man save them, or else they lose their way in life. Female characters are also very skinny, thin, with a big chest, and have sexualized bodies. They are taking advantage. For example, Belle staying with the Beast, who is abusive and violent behavior, or Ariel, who gave her voice up to win over a guy's heart. These aren't great examples of how girls and women should be treated. Next are racial and ethnical stereotypes. People of color generally aren't portrayed well or with notable features. Latinos are portrayed as thugs and people or animals who are witty, comical, and make bad decisions. African Americans are seen with thick accents and bad people who are antagonists. Disney's hidden messages are by some degree the reason little girls develop attitudes towards their bodies, self-esteem, and men. Onto the controversial topic of 9/11. Many people believe 9/11 was an inside job, and the government planned this to happen to 3,000 people. Many people assume the government planted bombs in the building because those twin towers could not have fallen and crushed to the ground in an hour. The government's attempt was to increase power and fear by faking a terror attack in order to obtain their goal, making the citizens fearful, so they will be ignorant and it will be easier to control them. An example to this, in the Operation Himmler, they faked an attack on their people and resources, which then they blamed on Poland to justify the invasion. Citizens rather believe their government because who else can they believe to run their country? If their government can do something as horrible as make 9/11 happen and sacrifice 3,800 people, what else can they do to the people in America? Gaza Strip. 1.7 million people living in this crowded area. Most biased sources describe Gaza as the world's largest open-air prison. Israel considers Hamas a terrorist organization, and Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip has cut them off from the entire world. 80% of the population is dependent on aid. More than 90% of Gaza's water is unsafe for drinking. And not many people can leave Gaza since they are considered a terrorist group, especially because of Egypt. The Rafah border limits certain people to go in and come out. Gaza can't keep up with supplies with its growing whopping 1.7 million population. Gaza's economy is paralyzed. Israel has launched many attacks on Gaza, but when you compare throwing stones to throwing gas canisters, it's pretty unproportionate. They don't have materials to make weapons since Israel's limiting them to do so. But this all started because 3 young boys were kidnapped and killed in Israel, and they undoubtedly blamed the Hamas in Gaza. They launched airstrikes into Gaza, and Palestinians fired back rockets in response. This started war, and to think Obama thought he could get the two sides on the same side. A Palestinian boy was murdered by 6 Israelis as revenge. Gaza released more rockets, which Israel launched even more strikes in Gaza. As you can see, it's a constant back and forth battle between these two, kind of like the Hammurabi's Code, an eye for an eye. There was no justice, and that's how they convicted felons.